Okay, this is going to be a quick one shot, basically looking at one functionality, specifically the ability to zoom your camera in a 2D game. So say it's like an overhead perspective, like a dungeon crawl, multi-directional action game. The reason why it's a little bit more challenging is because in a 2D game, the orthographic camera ignores the z-axis. So I can change the horizontal position, I can change the vertical, and as based on the border, you can see that would show up differently when you're playing. But let's change the z-axis. No difference, because it ignores absolute depth. Now you can get into a position where relative depth is a problem, that if you take an object and you put it on the wrong if you put it too far on the z coordinate, like if you put it behind the camera won't see it. But for the most part, in a 2D game, really everything should be at the same layer. If you need something to be on top of each other, you can use what's known as ordinate layer to do that. You really shouldn't be messing around with the z-axis. So if we can't just change the z position, then how do we do a zoom? What you do is you change the camera size. So effectively, it's a zoom. Now, just want to let you know that I already jumped ahead, obviously, and put a few things in, but there's absolutely no code here. If you click on the individual object, so here's the player object, no code, and on the floorboards, there's no code on these. I simply manually put them in place. So the idea is to make something that you can integrate seamlessly with your project. So what we have to do is we're going to add a component to the camera. So we do new script. Let's call it zoom control. And you can call it whatever you want. Now what we're going to do is we are going to detect if the scroll wheel is being used, because typically that's how you handle a zoom. Now I'm just going to paste this, and it's two lines surrounded by brackets. So the first one is if. This is how you check just about any variable. You can use an if. You can also use a few other commands, but if is very common. So if input, pretty straightforward, it's player input. And then this really is self-explanatory. Just copy this exactly. You don't have to mess around with this. Get access, quote, mouse, space, scroll wheel, one word, capital S, capital W, greater than 0. So if you're scrolling up, it comes out as greater than 0. Get component. So get component is getting a component of whatever object this script is attached to. This script is attached to the camera, so it's saying get component. What component? It's getting the camera component. It's getting orthographic size. Now this is a variable which we have to define. So up here, public, and we'll call this float as the type. We already said it's going to be zoom size. And we'll have it default to 5 because that's the default size when you first create a project for the size variable. Now, so if you're scrolling in, then you want it to actually, the zoom size needs to get smaller. Same thing, almost exactly the same code with just a couple tweaks. If it's less than 0, which is a scroll down, then the zoom size is going to get bigger. Now there's one thing we're going to check for, but let's just watch how this works. So I'm going to hit the scroll wheel up, what I was getting at when I said there's one thing we have to change is it only allows for one layer of zoom. So you would actually have to change just a little bit, because this is not cumulative. This is just saying zoom size -1. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to remove this from here. And instead, we're going to just change zoom size. So zoom size, and the way you reduce is you put in the name of the variable, and then you write minus equals, and then the amount that you want to change it by. So this gets rid of some of the redundancy, because now you only have one get component statement. Save it again. Run it again. But now we have a new problem. We zoomed so excessively that it flipped onto the other side of it. So, you trade one problem for another. So we make one final change. And so if zoom size is greater than, we'll say 2. So if the zoom size is greater than 2, then it goes ahead and does the subtraction. So we're going to do the same thing here. That we're going to do a check. And if zoom size is and we'll say if it's less than 4, that way it can go up to 5. Save this. Scroll in, scroll in, scroll in, and now it stops. I'm scrolling and it's not going any further. So scroll out, scroll out, scroll out, stops. So there we go. Now I could have just jumped right in and did this to begin with, but I really wanted to show you the evolution of this process and break down the logic as to why you have to do it so you can see the results. So that's it. That's how you do zoom, camera zoom on a 2D game.